Let us pray. We come before you this day in remembrance and thanksgiving for the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We thank you for his example, words, writings, leadership, witness, and courage. We understand that on April 4th, 1968, almost 50 years ago, an assassin took the life, but not the dream, of Dr. King. We echo the words of the late Senator Ted Kennedy: the work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream shall never die. Grant us a renewed focus on ensuring our freedoms are protected and not revoked. God reminds us of the words of Dr. King, that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Intensify our efforts to not be indifferent to the social, educational, and economic inequalities of our brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. Grant us the courage to lead, to be bold, and understand that you can use ordinary people to do extraordinary things. We are grateful that Dr. King taught us that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. We don't have to have a college degree to serve or make a subject and verb degree to serve. All we need is a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Help us to never forget that we are the light of the world and the salt of the earth. Let us model after NDOT and DPW truck drivers, relentlessly plowing through the darkness and often hazardous conditions, sprinkling salt on the highway and hedges to ensure everyone reaches their desired destination. And let everyone say, amen.
Amen. You may be seated. If we could, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the men of Alpha Phi Alpha presenting the commemorative wreath, and Pastor Tammy Butler Robinson for that thoughtful invocation and for her service to the house of God here in Indianapolis. Round of applause for both Tammy and for the Alpha Phi Alpha. Good afternoon and welcome to the 27th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Indiana Holiday Celebration. My name is Abdul Hakim Shabazz. I write a few blogs, try to practice law on occasion, and am fortunate enough to be here at today's event. I was thinking this morning about how to put all this together. I kind of kept an eye on the weather because, as you all know, things got a little dicey in some parts of Indiana. And as I called Leslie, who's one of the assistants here at the Civil Rights Commission, I was like, hey, Leslie, are we going to do this? Like, you know, the weather, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, boy, you need to stop talking. You know what our grandparents went through? I was like, yeah, I know. So, yeah. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, because you know what? People like Dr. King, my parents, our grandparents can go through a lot more strife. You can get your butt in the car and drive a little bit slower to get down here for Martin Luther King Day. Which reminds me of the quote I knew I was going to use. It says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, as Dr. King would say, keep moving forward. And here we are today. Like I said, I'm honored to be the Mass Ceremonies program, and it's a great way as we mark 50 years since Dr. King left us during the assassination. So on behalf of our speakers and presenters, we want to thank all of you for joining us. To open our program, I'd like to bring to the podium Commissioner Jenna Beliza of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Indiana Holiday Commission. Jenna.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I dropped my glasses. On behalf of the Martin Luther King Jr. Indiana Holiday Commission, I'd like to welcome all of you to the 27th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Indiana Holiday Celebration. My name, as Abdul said, is I'm Commissioner Janae Bellezza, and I'm honored to have this privilege of welcoming you all here today and to tell you a little bit about the MLK Commission and what we do. First of all, I'd like to ask if there are any other commissioners here, if you wouldn't mind standing so people can identify who you are. Thank you very much. So the MLK Commission promotes Dr. King's legacy of equity, equal justice, and service to others, and provides educational tools that demonstrate the historical significance and current relevance of Dr. King's life and how it relates to America as a whole. This year that marks 50 years since Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, the MLK Commission decided to take a statewide approach to our outreach in this monumental year of commemoration. one of several desires of our former chairman, Darrell Ragland. We lost Mr. Ragland last year, and I just want to say a few words about him because I considered him a friend and a mentor and just an incredible, wise man. He was a pillar in the commission, and he will be greatly missed. His dedication to service and example that he set for the commission was unmatched, and we will continue to reflect on that in his absence. And it is my desire, if I may say so, that some of those things that we discussed about the visions that we had for the commission, we, the commission members that are still here, will ensure that his desires and his dreams get met. So be on the lookout for Darrell Ragland's works. There's one more thing that I have to tell you before I go, which is I welcome you all to attend the 7th annual day of service at Watkins Park Family Center on Monday, January 15th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I didn't come up with this, but I wish I had. So I will end saying, make it a day on serving in Dr. King's legacy and not a day off. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your years of service to the MLK Day Holiday Commission. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take a moment to have a couple of our elected officials come up and address you. It is very easy for us these days to be, fill in the metaphor of your choice, frustrated, whatever, with Washington, D.C. because of all the angst and bickering. But what I can say about our next two speakers truly do both exemplify the spirit of Dr. King. Even though one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, they work together for the betterment of not just all Hoosiers, but also for this great country that we all live in. And so, starting out with those remarks is U.S. Senator Joe Donnelly. Joe.
Thank you so much, Abdul. To the Alphas, I want to say thank you for all you've done for our community, for all your help with this event, for your brother, Martin Luther King. I actually saw a picture online this morning when he was inducted at Boston University as an Alpha. He looked like a very young Alpha at that point. And that legacy that he left for you and for all of us lives on forever. Governor, Mrs. Holcomb, thank you so much. Abdul, thank you to the commission. This is such a special day for our state and for our country. Just a few blocks away is where Bobby Kennedy came out after the horrible news of the loss of Dr. King, of the killing of Dr. King. And Indianapolis came together. A place that is, I don't think it's unfair to say, a place that park is sacred ground. And the message of Dr. King to all of us is more pertinent today, more powerful today than ever. That love trumps hate, that trying to find the best in others is such a better thing than trying to always look for problems. That every child born in this country, every child in this country has a right to have their dreams come true, should have a chance to get an amazing education, to see all their hopes be fulfilled. Dr. King brought that message to all of us. One of his sayings, that we all came here in different ships, but we're all in the same boat together now. That's the story of Indiana and the story of America. The arc of history bends toward justice. Dr. King moved that so far and in so many ways. And his weapon was the power of love. I was fortunate to visit the church he preached in Montgomery and to march across the bridge in Selma. And when you look and when you spend time there, you realize the heartache, you realize the injustice, but you realize the courage and the amazing fortitude and determination. What an American hero. What a world hero. We are so grateful to have the chance to honor today. God bless all of you, and God bless America, and thank you, Alphas. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Indiana's other senator, Todd Young.
Well, thank you, Abdul, and distinguished guests. As I reflected on my remarks today, I thought about the legacy of Dr. King and his unwavering fight for justice and freedom. His legacy reminds us that we can change lives and make a lasting impact in our communities. Dr. King demonstrated the power of love, respect, dignity, and hope. During the challenging circumstances of the civil rights movement, Dr. King implored others to be, and I love this phrase, custodians of hope. Those three words, custodians of hope, continue to have profound meaning, even today. Like Dr. King, we, together, must always take a stand against injustice and never give up hope that the goodness in people can prevail. One of my favorite books of Dr. King's legacy, The King Years, by Taylor Branch, describes the civil rights movement as follows: a bracing reminder that citizens and leaders can work miracles together, despite every hardship, against great odds. Today and every day, let's honor Dr. King's legacy by coming together as Hoosiers and as Americans and continuing to advocate for a fair playing field for everyone. By uniting our voices, we can work miracles together and be custodians of hope. It's a privilege to be here. God bless.
I want to take a quick moment to recognize a couple other folks who I saw, Indiana statewide elected officials. Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, Madam Lieutenant Governor, and State Treasurer Tara Klutz was also here as well. As some of you folks know, I am not from Indiana. I'm originally from Illinois, and I cut my teeth in Illinois politics. And the big difference between Illinois politics and Indiana, if you're on stage with Indiana elected officials, it's an event like this. If you're on stage with Illinois officials, it's probably a police lineup. So. You got to live there, folks, to really appreciate that one. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the 51st governor of the great state of Indiana, Governor Eric J. Holcomb. He's a veteran of the United States. Wow, you're so hot popular, people don't even let me finish the introduction anymore. I never had this issue with Mike and Mitch, so I'm just letting you know. Throughout his career, the governor has earned a reputation of being a consensus builder, worked with Hoosiers from all walks of life to build support for a number of initiatives, and authored the book Leading the Revolution, which outlined the successes of former Governor Mitch Daniels. He is a graduate of Pike High School and Hanover College in southeastern Indiana. He majored in U.S. history and also served in the Navy. And his better half, the lovely First Lady Janet Holcomb, is never too far away. Ladies and gentlemen, the governor of Indiana, Eric Holcomb.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know I don't say this often enough, Abdul, but it is good to see you. You can never help yourself. And it's so good to be with all of you here today. Today is, as you've already heard, it's more than an important one day. It's an inspiring day, and it's one that is a strong reminder and one that orients us for every other day that follows. But for me to be standing here among you, welcoming you in the People's House, and that's exactly what it is, and I see by many familiar faces that I'm welcoming back many of you, and it's an honor to stand with you. As you all know, Dr. King was far beyond just a champion of equality and a relentless and a focused advocate for civil rights and for freedom. But what is always strikes me and what's amazing when you reflect back and when you review what he was doing, not just saying, but what he was doing, He was doing it all during very uncertain times. And when you rewind the tape and you put it all into context, and it's as true as it was 5 decades ago, what he stood for matters and makes a profound difference in not just our lives, but every life that we are able to touch. He said 52 years ago in a college next door in Ohio to students, and this is one of my favorite quotes. He said that that in a building somewhat like this, it reminds me that as you turn out or turn down all the noise and you clear away all the clutter, that it's always the right time to do the right thing. And those are easy words to say, but it's something that I, in my own way, try to start out every day. And he didn't just leave us those words, obviously. He left us his actions to model our conduct after. He left us those deeds. He didn't just, as you said, he didn't just leave us something to live by. He left us something to live up to, which is beyond aspirational, because of through him and through what he endured day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. So many of us that maybe didn't experience the prejudice firsthand, we learned it through him. That ripple effect around the world, the light that he shined, is again beyond aspirational, and all traces back to this understanding that we all come from our Creator, that we're all given these unalienable rights, that they come from him. And then that instructs and that informs, again, our conduct, and one to be modeled. And it's that legacy, it's that example that reminds me, and I suspect reminds you all, that there's this essential, not just advantage, but this essential value to bringing people together. And that's a value, as Abdul said, that we need to recover, especially in times like today, some uncertain times like we find ourselves in, and that value of civility, to listening to others, to respecting others, supporting each other. And I thought about that as we marched from the Monument Circle to our State House, that this may be the second time as governor that I've stood on this stage. It's probably the 10th or 12th time that I've attended this event, but I'm always struck to see the different faces that come together at this moment, some of which have touched Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., some of which have, like myself, just studied what he contributed to this world. And many of us have learned about the fights that he took up, the fight to make sure that right endured. But that cause and that dream that he had, that journey, that march, we didn't come this far. He didn't expect us to only come this far, to just come this far. And so, as I said last year, the march, this journey, that's what I'm most excited about. It's days like this that are so encouraging and that can speak to folks around the world. It's a march that we'll continue to do, and I look forward to being step by step, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and it's an example that not only he shared, but I believe the state of Indiana continues to share, that you can dream those dreams and you can realize them here. And in great part, it's because of not just his words and his deeds, but his legacy that we continue to try to honor. And it's also because of the teammates, and again, the familiar faces that I see and some new friends, that I'm confident that our best days are yet ahead, and that what he endured is not in vain. And I know we can continue together to continue this march to make sure that Dr. King's dream never dies. Thank you. And just one more thing before I go, and speaking about teammates, I just want to take a couple minutes that I hope you find worthy. I talked about us coming together and leadership that Dr. King exuded, and the importance of civility and diversity and being inclusive and making sure that those ingredients are all mixed up and ready to go. And I was thinking again about this being the second time, and I was reflecting back on last year, and I wanted to continue or make it a tradition and continue it this year. As you may recall, last year when I was here, if you were, I awarded an individual with the Sagamore of the Wabash, the highest honor the state of Indiana can give. And in thinking about today, there are very few others that live up to that standard, that have pulled a lot of us in the right direction, on the right walk, on this journey. And it's altogether fitting that today, with all of you here, and her, Tanya Bell, the CEO of Indiana Black Expo Incorporated, is just such that person. You all know Tanya as this tireless advocate, someone that can beat that drum and get everyone marching in the same direction, as we all have many different places of our origin. But Tanya, day in and day out, year after year, continues to just truly take it to the next level. And because of all of her accomplishments to date and those to come, I am honored to affix my name permanently next to her and award her the Sagamore of the Wabash for the state of Indiana.
I got to grab my notes. And thank you for that picture in the program. It's probably about 20 years old, but I appreciate that. But in all sincerity, Governor, thank you so much for blessing me with this honor. You have been a true friend of Indiana Black Expo and the work that we do throughout the state of Indiana. In the state, we have always had a wonderful relationship with the state of Indiana, and we cannot do what we do without you. So thank you, First Lady. We just thank the state for the support. Can we give them? Thank you. So by way of brief introduction, for folks who do not know me, I'm from Terre Haute, Indiana. I was raised by a single parent, and at the age of 21, I actually became a single parent myself. I grew up in poverty at that time. I didn't know what that really meant, because I had a strong mother who showed us love. And today, I'm glad that I'm sharing this room with her legacy today. And I do have my son, Deontay Gates, and Melody Bell, if you can just kind of raise and be recognized, that's with me here today. My support network. So this single-parent mother became a first-generation college student, and then a college graduate, and then a law student, and then a law graduate, to a practicing attorney, to the president and CEO of one of the most prestigious organizations in the state at the age of 32, to a trustee for my alma mater, Indiana State University, with various professional accomplishments, to now receiving the Sagamore of the Wabash from the 51st Governor of Indiana. When I reflect on just how I got here today, one of the things that I did want to come and kind of share with the youth, but I realized that school's closed, and that was just really the importance of an education. I would not be where I am today. All the doors would never have opened for me if I did not pursue my education. So for the youth that are in here, including my children, they know in our house how important it is, particularly as a single black woman. I needed to have it, and so it's very important. With respect to my involvement with Indiana Black Expo, I have been involved with IBE for 18 years. 10 years as the president and CEO, 6 years on the board of directors prior to that, and 2 years as their outside general counsel prior to that. And I did not take this job because of the concerts. And I have my wonderful staff that's over here, and I think they can vouch. It's because of the work that we do throughout the state of Indiana. When those concerts are over, we're in the community and we're doing a lot of work. And so that is what's really important with respect to the work that we do for the organization. It's about the work that we're doing with the youth right now in public housing, where 80% of their parents are receiving mental health services, and too many of them have to decide whether to go to school or to work because mom or grandpa need help with paying the bills, or those youth that struggle in school because of the trauma that they witness and experience every day to where they cannot focus. Even through constant frustrations with the service that we're doing out in the community, that is the work that fuels us. That is what is aligned with Dr. King's character of service and helping others. So one of the things that I just want to close today by saying, how do we move forward with making sure that we keep Dr. King's dream alive and that we are effective with what we do in the community? And Senator Donnelly just talked about it earlier, and Dr. King has already given that roadmap. He said, we must discover the power of love. The redemptive power of love. And when we discover that, we will be able to make of this old world a new world. We will be able to make men better. Love is the only way. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tanya, on receiving Indiana's highest distinction award, the Sagamore of the Wabash. Tanya is a close personal friend, and she's also been a pillar of this committee, continuing to work toward the better lives of our youth, regardless of the challenges. Also, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to let you know, we're actually ahead of schedule. I know. Imagine that. No pressure on our keynote speakers, but we're ahead of schedule. And our first keynote speaker, ladies and gentlemen, honored to bring up to reflect on the past, present, future of a dream is Reverend Mel Jackson, and then will be followed by Pastor Sullivan, Jr. Keep me on track.
To the great head of the church, who is Christ Jesus, and to all of my sisters and brothers here, young and old, and those well known and the least that are known, and to my beloved wife, Jean Jackson. Let everybody see my beloved wife. Will you stand? I am surely honored today to be here in the midst of this great crowd of witnesses to the greatness of this country, with all the faults and failures. And I'm saying that in advance of some things that are not so good to say. But in all of its faults and failures, I don't find a lot of people trying to leave here, America. A lot of people trying to get here. So I want to point out that it doesn't matter where you start or how you start. What is important is how you finish. And I also want you to know that I'm a product of Leesburg, Florida. It's about big as this row of people over here. And Leesburg sits between two of the largest inland lakes in the state, Lake Griffin, Lake Harris, 42 miles west of Orlando. And I mention that because of the greatness of this country. It didn't always seem great to me. Coming from that little hammock in Florida, I suffered the vagaries of extreme racism. It was legal and tightly enforced. And I came from that kind of a background, and I didn't stay there any longer than it took me to get away from there. I ran away when I was 12 years old. I hit the road, and bullheaded and stubborn. But tough times can make you that way. And I became an activist long before I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. King. I had started all kinds of marches and demonstrations in Dayton, Ohio, which was my adopted hometown, and got locked up a few times, got a few beatings, but I had no patience for being shunted to the side. I think everybody have a desire to know that you have some value, some worth. Our children today, many of these kids that we see on the street, many of them carrying guns of all denominations, all sorts, are really looking for who they are. And everybody has worth and value. And I think that's what I was looking for, is who was I and what value did I have. I was trying to find me, and I finally did when I was in my mid-40s. I finally began to find me. But I started, got involved because a black man in Dayton, Ohio, on West 5th Street, which was the main thoroughfare for colored folks, was out sweeping the street in front of the bar that had closed just a few hours earlier, and a carload of young white toughs drove through, and they shot that man to death. And I got radicalized. I waved the car down when I heard about it. I waved the car down, and several young people like myself jumped at it and tried to find the car. But it's probably good that we didn't. We might have gotten shot as well. But it started me. I was impatient, and I needed to get my hands and my feet and my head into the liberation movement. And so I started organizing demonstrations all over the place, wreaking havoc into businesses, going in and taking over the switchboard and that sort of thing, disrupting and wanting to be locked up because it got more people, more attention, and it radicalized a lot of other people. But I found out that demonstrations are meant only to call attention to issues and problems. But once you call attention and you get people angry, then what do? I had to learn that there was something called organizing, and there's purpose for organizing. You organize for change, and the approach to that is not always pretty. But I learned from a man named Saul Alinsky, A-L-I-N-S-K-Y, a well-known, he was the first person to put together a community organizing process. He was born in the back of the yards in Chicago. That's the stockyards, if you will. And there were all kinds of nobodies back there. There was Jews, Polacks, people from all over. They were on life's trash pile for white people. All of us blacks was on life's trash pile at the time. But Saul Alinsky, among other things, said, you have got to know what the problems are that you're trying to address, and you've got to learn a way of bringing the attention to the people who are most affected. One of his great sayings was, the people who are the subject of the problems and the issues, the privations, are the ones who are best qualified once they understand, are informed, are the best people to make the decisions that are best for themselves. And that still holds true. But picketing and marching and calling attention to issues was not enough. You need to have a way and a process for getting people engaged. And I learned how to do that by calling for meetings, naming organizations that people could get to, and but I hit some rough bumps. One of those was taking my 16-month-old son to a demonstration that we'd organized at Good Samaritan Hospital in Dayton, and it was in behalf of the dietary workers, black and white women. No guys were pulling trays that were meant for horses to pull. Couldn't get a meeting with the director, so we took his office over, and that got his attention. And but I got locked up with my 16-month-old son in my arms, and I caught hell for that, because when his mother saw on the news that her boy was locked up, had been put in a paddy wagon, and was downtown in jail with a bull-headed daddy, I had some rough times after that. But Good Samaritan showed me also how to challenge the power. And I wanted the police. We did not have good law enforcement, good in the sense that everybody got treated the same way. And so in this hospital, I had this boy with me, and going through the wards, the police following, and we went into the heart ward, and the policeman was saying, don't. We just kept walking. We meant no harm. We walked right on through, and some of the patients was shaking their fists and so forth. But the issue was to force them to be the policemen that they were in the street. But it took, if you're going to have change, and this is something that Dr. King, whom I met in '64, Saul Alinsky had invited him to Chicago and made it possible for us to see him and talk with him. And in that hour or two that we were together, I learned some fundamental rules of life. One was, Dr. King said, he didn't value his life above his mission. And I said, what do you mean? I said, you know, I'm glad to meet you because I think you're nuts. I think you're a wimp. You let people beat on you and you don't fight back. And he talked about the greatest weapon that exists in the life of a person is love and humility. And he says it takes strength, it takes power to love people who hate you. And that was something I had a problem with. I wanted to fight. I wanted to take care of business. But Dr. King, in those couple of hours, talked to me about, he said, if a man is not willing to die for something, he's not fit to live. I said, man, I ain't wanting to die. I said, but, you know, I'm going to fight back. But he talked about systemic change. I didn't know what he was talking about. We were demonstrating and organizing because we were angry and wanted to rip people apart. But he talked to me. He said, the measure of a man is his mind. You have to have the mind to think and to figure out some things. And I learned that you have to know where you're trying to go. And it means that in planning, you must have at least 4 things. You must have a subject, a quality, a quantity, and a timeline. And you can figure that out on your way too. But without that, it's like jumping on the road to go to Southern California. You don't have a road map and never been that way before. So even if you get there, you don't know you're there because you didn't know that's where you was going in the first place. So you've got to have a plan. The other thing is that when talking to Dr. King, he talked about systemic change, and I didn't know what he was talking about. He says it's systems that need changing. You're trying to change individual people. It's systems, systemic. It's the institution that needs change. And he talked to me about the Constitution. He said, there is a Bill of Rights. He says the forefathers of this great country said that all men, and ladies, that meant you as well, all men are born equal. And that struck home to me. All men are born equal. Nobody is any better than the other. And I am willing to lay down my life to show people what to look for and how to deal with what you find. And you must talk about institutional change, changing the institution, changing it from what's wrong to demanding what is right according to the Constitution. He says that's what we're about, is trying to call the racist people and the people who don't know, the people who do know, the people who will, and the people who won't, is that there is something called the Constitution. All we're trying to do is make America obey the Constitution. men, George Washington, he named off all these people. So these people fought for the right to make choices for themselves and to live out their lives peacefully according to what's best for them. And I got an education from this man, and he said, you change the institution, and you live, you die for that, because it is, if a man is not willing to give his life, to die for something he is not fit to live. He said, so I'm willing to lay down my life because I love you. I love every human being, even the ones that are beating on us, kicking us. And he said he was doing that to get the attention of America, the violence that people were heaping on one another. That was a tough thing for me to understand. But he says you change the institution and you change America. You get America to focus on what this nation really is about. And that's why I opened my remarks about not really understanding a lot of what I was about. But I want to tell you something that every preacher in here and many Christians know. Character and commitment is born in the crucible of pain. You show me somebody that has never suffered, I'll show you somebody who don't even know who they are. So I say to you this evening, because I know this man, that's the MC. And I'm looking around for the hook. But I want to say this to you this evening, that again, if you've not suffered, if you have not struggled for things to be better in your life, you don't know who you are yet. And I challenge you to do like finally I did when I came home from the military. I had went in the military in a segregated society that was rigidly enforced. And when I came out, it was the same thing. And I was mad. And I tried to do something about it, but my madness turned to a life of peace. Thanks be to God for Dr. M.L. King, whom I met on 3 separate occasions, but the biggest and most important one was in Chicago. And so I want to say to all of us, America, America, the land of the home and the free. God bless America.
Thank you, Pastor Reverend Mel Jackson. Now we're going to hear just a few words from Pastor Sullivan, Jr.
I know, right? How's everybody doing? To our governor and his wife and all the elected officials, this is a powerful day of meaning. Can we just give it up for this great living legend and Pastor Mel Jackson? I promise y'all I'm going to be as brief as I can. I am here to stand and share just a few words about this great man, this iconic individual named Martin Luther King Jr. If you are an African American minister, he is the minister of ministers. We all have studied him and we've lived in his shadows and gleaned so much from him. Really quickly, I want to just share some things with us, because I don't just believe this is a time for us to come together and to look back. I think it's also a chance for us to look forward. As I look at this room, all of us are comprised of different backgrounds and creeds and colors and cultures and all those kinds of things that comprise America. All of us collectively have a responsibility, and that is to make a difference in our communities, in our city, and in our country. So really quickly, I want you to help me and do me a favor. Turn to your neighbor and tell him, neighbor, you too can make a difference. Really quickly, there used to be a segment on NBC Nightly News, and on that segment they had, what they would do is they would showcase the lives of ordinary individuals who in their communities and wherever they were used what they had, and they were just ordinary individuals, but they strove to work and to make a difference. They made a difference by opening up programs for children in their communities. They made a difference by giving groceries to those who were hungry. They made a difference by tutoring those young people who were left out in the cold and didn't have direction. And the point of this particular segment on the show was all of us have a responsibility to make a difference in our community. Three things really quickly I want to share about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was someone who literally sought to make a difference. He was literally a minister in every sense of the word. That word minister means to serve. Here it is, Dr. King, who was educated, who had all of these degrees, all of this education, chose as his life's work to be a minister and a servant to help other people. And this is why this is important, because we live in a generation, in a day and age, where so many people are looking for success, they want money, and they want to be great. And nothing is wrong with some of those things, but I think we've lost the significance of what it means to serve. In fact, it was Jesus who said, if you want to be great, you got to start off at the bottom and start off serving. Martin Luther King Jr., before he died, 4 months before he was assassinated, shared a message called the drum major instinct. He said, all of us have this passion to be out front. We all want to be great. We all want to be seen. We all want to be significant. He said the way to significance is to serve. And I believe all of us are to use the tools and the gifts and the skills that we have to make a difference wherever we can. There was a man who was walking down the ocean, and as he was walking across the beach, and as the ocean had washed up all of these different starfish, there was a young boy he saw who was picking up starfish, and the boy was throwing them in one by one. There were thousands of starfish, and the man stopped him and said, what are you doing? All of these starfish, you can't possibly make a difference. He said, what difference could that make? And the boy just kept on picking up the starfish. He threw them in one by one, and he said it made a difference to that one. It made a difference to that one. See, you may not be able to change the world, but you can touch one somebody. You may not be able to change the entire world, but you can encourage somebody, uplift somebody, help somebody, and love somebody. You should strive to make a difference. So King, number one, he sought to make a difference, but he also sacrificed to make a difference. I am amazed at the intellectual property of Martin Luther King Jr. He graduated high school at 15 years old. He graduated with a bachelor's degree at 18 years old. He graduated with the PhD at 26 years of age. He had all of the education to choose a different field of profession, but he chose to sacrifice and to share his gifts and talents with others. And I want to share with those of us who are in here today. Some of us are more privileged than others. Some of us have been born in certain circles, and we have certain friends, and we've got certain opportunities that aren't afforded to everybody. I believe to whom much is given, much is required. And I don't believe God deposited all he did in you and I for us to sit on what we have, but God wants us to share what we have with someone else. Martin Luther King Jr. teaches us that all of us have a responsibility to use the gifts and the talents that God has entrusted into our care, not just to make a dollar, but to make a difference. He paid the ultimate price. And the sacrifice was that he gave his own life in order that other people might experience equality and the American dream. Lastly, Dr. King not only sought to make a difference, he sacrificed to make a difference, but he succeeded at making a difference. Because even though he was killed 50 years ago, he changed the landscape of America, opened up doors for opportunity for people of color and different backgrounds who no longer have to go to the back door, we can go through the front. Who no longer have to sit at the back seat of the bus, we can go to the front. He made a difference in opening up opportunities for people who before did not have those opportunities. He succeeded, and what's amazing about Dr. King, we don't know what kind of car he drove, what kind of tailor-made suits he wore, what type of jewelry he possessed, what type of house he lived in, the type of money he had, but there are 900 streets in America named after him. There's a monument in Washington, D.C. to him. Success is not measured by making a dollar, it's measured by making a difference. And as I get ready to close and take my seat, there is another king who Martin Luther King Jr. followed in the footsteps of. This king was a Palestinian Jew of color. He came to his own, but his own received him not. He was rejected and despised by men. He was crucified, he hung, bled, and died. And the old Baptist preacher would say he died on Friday night. He died until the sun refused to shine. He died until the earth began to stagger like a drunken man. But early one Sunday morning, he got up out of the grave with all power in his hand. And he has a name that's above every name. I wish I had a witness up in here. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords who made a difference. Now you go make a difference. God bless you.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our keynote speakers, Pastor Reverend Ken Sullivan, as well as Reverend Mel Jackson. Round of applause for our keynote speakers this afternoon. As we get ready to come toward the end of our program, we cannot have our annual Martin Luther King Day Legacy celebration without thinking and sort of recognizing certain individuals in the great state of Indiana who symbolize the different aspects of Dr. King. And so we want to begin with the 2018 Freedom Award, and that Freedom Award goes to Babette Bowling of Elkhart, Indiana. Babette. Dr. King's legacy is rooted in service and equality, and the following award recipients exemplify those in their field. Ms. Babette Bowling currently runs a school of fitness program, Raise the Bar Drumline, in Westside Middle School in Elkhart to attract kids who want to move. Raise the Bar Drum provides a solid foundation of handling life's lessons, as well as an opportunity to participate in youth religious studies. She is an active member of the Elkhart Education Foundation and has raised more than $100,000 that goes to the school's foundation. Happy to present you with the 2018 Freedom Award. Congratulations.
Yes, we have to.
Yeah. It's like the Academy Awards. When I start playing the music, you'll know.
It's only right after that amazing lesson for us all that we also hear from a woman, because Jesus sent the women to give some of the most important messages out there. And I want you to know that each woman, and come up here, Miss Tanya. This is one of the most powerful women with one of the greatest messages, with one of the greatest lessons. And I so appreciate that I get to stand up here with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
When Martin Luther King was on his mission, I was a youngster trying to find equality for women. I was. And I was doing it in little ways. I was asking the guy in the 6th grade recess to teach me how to do a layup. Please let me do a layup. I want to know how to do a layup like the boys. Eventually, I became a basketball coach from that one person helping me. And I touched the lives for 10 years of girls in middle school and taught them not just basketball, but the lessons of life. And from there, I was able to affect different ways to help girls move. And the best thing I could think of for students was letting them hit something. In junior high, you're just ready to hit something. So I said, I gotta find something, and I found drums. And I started a drumming program that would help them to want to come and participate in something that was good and healthy. And through that activity, we taught lessons, and I fed them. And we gathered together to teach character lessons and Bible study. And I actually kind of bribed them to stay for that other stuff by feeding them really well. And they loved it. And we formed bonds over time. My roots, and I want to thank you so much for being here, for caring about one more thing, our dignitaries, our elected officials, and those that are here, and particularly the Elkhart chapter of Indiana Black Expo for nominating me for this award. Because, thank you. My roots are deep in Elkhart. I was born and raised in Elkhart, Indiana 62 years ago. I just had my birthday on Christmas Eve. And I love Elkhart. I love everything about it. I love most of all the people of Elkhart. I love our diversity. I love that we get to be arm in arm in Elkhart, Indiana. And one of the things that started that for me was my mother, another woman, who in the early 80s was asked to be part of a racial round table discussion. She was an artist. She took her talents as an artist and said, what can I do to bring people together? And she made the Color Project. And many of you don't know what that is. But it would be like walking up to a little white child and saying, are you white? And having them put their hand on a white piece of paper, and they say, oh no, I'm actually kind of tan or brown. And going up to a little black child and saying, with a black piece of paper, and having them hold their hand up to that paper and saying, are you black? And they would say, well, yes, but no, I'm actually kind of brown. And through an art lesson in the early 80s called the Color Project, my mother took the three primary colors that we are all made up of, red, yellow, and blue, added water depending on the melanin in our skin, had them outline their hands on a paper plate, and mixed those colors with water, got to their perfect skin tone color, painted their hands, and hung them. And no one could identify their hand because we are all different shades of brown. There was nobody that was different from the other person. We were all different shades of brown, and that's what I was raised on. I was raised on that we are more alike than we are different. And that was my mom's first lesson. In that great lesson, using her talents, she was really, really a quiet and meek and mild person, but used her art talents to show people how much more alike we are than how different we are. From there, advance 25 years, and I have the privilege of raising 5 absolutely powerful, wonderful daughters. Next year, I'll be married 40 years, and my husband and I together have formed a way to teach them how to see people. My husband is an active physician, ophthalmologist in our community, does whatever he can do to see everyone. No pun intended. And from that, my girls have learned to see people. And my daughter that's here, as well as my daughter at home, school was canceled, so she needed to stay home with my grandchildren, founded the Elkhart Education Foundation. And with that, we brought Carrie Kennedy to Elkhart through the Robert Kennedy Foundation, and we were the only school system in the United States fully implementing their Speak Truth to Power curriculum across the board. We teach what defenders of the past were, and we teach what we can be defenders now and into the future. I love that we get that privilege to touch 13,000 students in Elkhart Community Schools with that positive message. Thank you. And those girls, I'm passing the baton. I'm the wind beneath their wings. But I'm not going away. But my husband, I got a little bit more in me. But we're passing the baton to that generation that sees what needs to be done, that sees the current inequality, that sees the hypocrisy of speaking one thing and doing another. We talk all the time about walking the talk. And the greatest message that my husband and I have been able to pass on to our children is that when much is given, much is expected, and you must walk the talk. And I promise you that up in the corner of Elkhart, Indiana, we are walking the talk of our Indiana Black Expo. We are walking the talk for all of our politicians, and we are praying every single day that character will rise to the top, and that we will have a community and a country, one person at a time. That's what we call that, grassroots efforts, way up in Elkhart, Indiana. My little mom, to me, to my daughters. Grassroots effort in reaching the dreams and goals of our great and powerful leader that continues to resonate with all of us today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are so proud and humbled to be a part of this ceremony. Thank you so, so very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next award, ladies and gentlemen, is the Chairman's Award, and the recipient of that award is actually the former chairman of the Martin Luther King Commission, Mr. Darrell Ragland. He embodied the true spirit of Dr. King's work ethic in advancing that mission and awareness, and he served on the commission under 3 governors, and his commitment to the community was recognized all over the state. He was also the CEO of the Darrell Ragland Living with Pancreatic Cancer Foundation, and is survived by his wife, Karen, his 4 children and grandchildren. And today, his wife of 41 years, Karen, is here on his behalf to receive the 2018 Chairman's Award. Karen.
Thank you. It is quite an honor to be able to accept this award on behalf of my husband, and I consider it a blessing and a continuance of his legacy. After working in the corporate world for almost 30 years, in 2002, Darrell was diagnosed with a rare pancreatic cancer, and it changed his world, it changed our world. And I remember saying to him, I'm going to introduce you to community, you know, because all his world was corporate and making decisions in the corporate world. And on our mirror, we keep a quote from Dr. King, and maybe a tad bit paraphrased. It says, in the moment of decision, the best thing to do is the right thing. And Darrell believed in the rights for all people and doing what was right to make a difference in their life. And after his passing, someone gave me a card, and the name of it was entitled Pennies from Heaven. And it said, whenever you see a penny on the ground, be sure to pick it up, because it's angels throwing down pennies from heaven. And so one particular day, I was just like at my wit's end. I was in tears. I was frustrated. I had taken my granddaughter to ballet, and I was waiting on her to finish her class. And so I had bought this chili from Wendy's, and I'm starving. I said, okay, I'm going to eat this. It's been a bad hair day. And I opened the bag, and inside the bag is nothing but chili. It's not a cracker, it's not a spoon, not a napkin, just chili. So I'm just like, oh, you know, this is the final, you know, on the day. So I'm digging around in the console. I said, there's got to be a spoon in here somewhere, you know. And in the corner is a penny. And it brought tears to me. And I said, you know, you're still taking care of me, even in your absence. And I remember looking, and beside the penny was a spoon. And, you know, it just, it again reminded me of just the caring attitude that he had and the difference that he wanted to constantly make in people's lives. So again, I thank you for this opportunity, and bless you.
And last, ladies and gentlemen, but definitely not least, the 2018 Trailblazer Award. And by the way, the person getting this, I was very happy to see you, but more happy to see the guys with the snowplows this morning. Mr. Steve Quick, the president of ASME Local 725. Steve's been employed by the city of Indianapolis since 1984, became the president local in 1994, and his service and dedication to protecting the rights of workers has led to national recognition and securing jobs for hundreds of members. He's been to support labor in states such as New York, Atlanta, Texas, on places like Seattle, Detroit, and New Orleans. He's also worked closely with city and state leaders to ensure the growth and development of this community, and Steve Quick is this year's 2018 Trailblazer Award recipient.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wasn't going to say nothing, but since everybody else had a couple things to say. In doing the research on Martin Luther King, what I appreciated about him as a young person is that he realized at a young age that he was created not for himself, because he didn't create himself, he was created for others. And that inspired me to do the things I do to make a difference in others, because that's all you can take with you is your deeds that you do. And I want to say one other thing that, and I go pretty quick. All of us should be like that turtle, hard on the outside, soft on the inside, and stick our neck out for others. Thank you.
I love a man who lives up to his last name. And now, ladies and gentlemen, some closing remarks before we wind down our program with Civil Rights Commissioner Greg Wilson.
Abdul can't make me get down, though. Listen, first I just want to say, excuse my voice is a little raspy. The weather, I mean, last night we did the placing of the wreath, start raining on us. It just seemed like we've been out through all kind of weather, but it's worth it. To honor and celebrate Dr. King is worth it. I mean, he's done more than we could ever pay him back for where we're at. So again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for this great walk. I really enjoyed it. The weather was blowing, snow, ice. I mean, you faced it all. But see, that's the thing about sacrifice. Some will and some won't. And I appreciate that. I want to say something about Mr. Ragland. and his wife. You know, when the governor appointed me as Executive Director of Civil Rights, thank you so much, Governor, I appreciate it. It's an honor because I love people, you know, and I enjoy people. And I feel like Governor made a statement when we were coming in. He said, Greg, I think we know everybody in Indiana together. So he knows more than me, though, or at least they know him. But I got a chance to, so we were going to do the MLK event, and the commission, they said that Mr. Ragland was the chair, so I know he had been a little sick, and so I said, okay, I want to come down and meet with them and talk about where do we go with the MLK Commission, how do we build on it, make it even stronger than what it was. So we drove down to Evansville the fast way. Now you don't have to go all the way around, straight shot. Even though there's no gas stations yet in between, nowhere to stop, so fill up and go. But anyway, we drove down and found his home, and we sit out on the back porch and deck, and we talk. We got to talk to him, and I had met him before because I go to the MLK Day of Service event even before I came to the governor's office. So I got a chance to talk to him. I mean, he was so excited about the possibilities, and he was telling me how encouraged he was that, you know, I wanted to help him do whatever it is that he wanted to do to make that commission stronger. And what I found was a man who was a servant. He had a servant's heart. That's not, everybody don't have a servant heart. You know that, come on now. Most people have my heart. It's about me. It's what I need. But he had a servant's heart. And all he talked about was doing for others and how we can make things better for the state of Indiana through the commission. So again, I want to also thank you and for just letting us have him, because truly that was special. So again, thank you. So again, Leslie's saying, come on, read your remarks, Greg. I'm sorry we weren't able to have the choir, but school got canceled, so they were not able to come. But trust me, it would have been good. Okay, it is my honor to be here at the 27th Annual Martin Luther King Holiday Celebration with all of you. In such a monumental year of remembrance, 50 years since Dr. King sacrificed his life. Also, don't forget, this is also 50 years of housing as well, and this is 55 years of Indiana civil rights. A huge thank you to Governor Holcomb. Again, we appreciate you, Governor, for even having this opportunity. The Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commission, Indiana Black Expo, asked me, Local 725, me and Steve Quick have worked together for a lot of years, and we've traveled this state. And one thing I would say about Steve, he always tells people, and he's a union guy, but he always tells them, you got to find a way to work together. And he's always found a way to do that. And I want to thank our community leaders. I want to thank all of you who sacrificed today, because truly with the weather, it was easy to stay. I could have stayed home. I congratulate all the award winners and their commitment to service and living Dr. King's legacy out loud. I personally want to thank you for taking time out of your surely busy schedule to celebrate in the legacy of Dr. King with us. I've so enjoyed hearing Reverend Jackson, which I was hoping he'd tell a little story of how he was on the memorial that day and listen to the I Have a Dream speech, because every time he tells it, I almost feel like I can hear it and feel it. You know, how he talks about Dr. King and the nervousness and the atmosphere. And again, I want to thank you, Pastor Sullivan. We appreciate you for taking time out. We know you have a busy schedule, but we needed those words of encouragement. The power and the spirit of Dr. King, infused in his sermons and speeches alike, brought people from all walks of life together, just like you see here today. Now, more than ever, we must take heed in one of Dr. King's most moving proclamations about the power of togetherness. And I quote, "We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools." That resonates strongly with me as we see constant headlines of senseless violence in our communities, division in our country. So as we leave here today, I urge you to keep Dr. King's dream alive. Do anybody think Dr. King's dream was dead? It's not. it continues. I mean, you have a lot of things that leave and pass away, but his dream continues. By being mindful of his platform that exalted a kind of love and kinship that we all decidedly capable of, just as King, tenacious and unyielding spirit, brought thousands together under the philosophies of freedom, justice, and racial equality. May we continue to remember his contributions to mankind every day, not just on the holiday. In the spirit of his life and works, please join us for our 7th annual day of service at Watkins Park Family Center on Monday, January 15, 2018. Make it a day on of serving his legacy and not a day off. And that starts at 9 a.m. I want to thank you all for joining us on our program today. And as I close, I want to introduce our friend, Rabbi Dennis Sasso, for the benediction as well as the final words from Dr. King himself. So again, thank you so much. Can everybody get a hand clap for making it through this weather today? And Tanya Bell on that Sagamore of the Wabash. Congratulations. Yes, we're here.
50 years ago, America and the world were left bereft with the tragic assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. 55 years ago, the soul of the world was stirred by the vision of he who said, "I have a dream." Today we are here in our religious, ethnic, and cultural diversity as Americans and as citizens of this state of Indiana to honor his vision and to renew his dream. We are here because despite sparks of faith and glimmers of hope, humanity is not yet redeemed. We are here because racism continues to grow and prejudice against minorities proliferates. We are here because the language of hate is spoken publicly, without hesitation, without embarrassment. We are here to remind ourselves that the dignity of the human person, the pursuit of social justice, the embrace of compassion and love, and the advancement of freedom and peace are our unfinished agenda. My teacher, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s colleague and companion in spirit, when marching with Dr. King once said, "I felt my feet were praying." I felt that earlier today as we walked to this precinct. He taught, "Racism is the maximum of hatred for the minimum of reason, the maximum of cruelty for the minimum of thinking." And Dr. King reminded us, hatred paralyzes life. Love releases it. Hatred confuses life. Love harmonizes it. Hatred darkens life. Love illuminates it. And so we pray, may the time not be distant, O God, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when hatred shall no longer enslave the heart, nor arrogance blind the eye, when all people created in your image shall acknowledge and embrace one another in fellowship and love, so that your kingdom of peace and justice will be established on earth. In Martin's name and memory, we ask it. For the sake of the children for whom he had a dream, and for today's dreamers, we promise to act on it. We shall overcome. Amen.
Please stay seated. And then also I want to mention we have refreshments too.
Okay.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California,